time, so we'll make a start. I'd like to welcome you here to the Policy and Resources Committee of 22nd of January. Mr Haswell, do we have any apologies?
I have no apologies, Leader. I'm missing 3 members, Councillors McGregor, Nicholl and Smith. Councillor Smith's behind me.
I believe that the other 2 members are in the building. Just one thing, we have an additional item that's not on the agenda, which will be taken as an exempt item to do with external, an external body and superannuation costs. I'll be taking a recess to make sure that everyone has read that paper at the appropriate time. With that, do we have any declarations of interest? Councillor Carson.
I declare an interest as a Director of Solway Heritage.
Councillor Maitland.
I assume that as an ex-Director of Solway Heritage, I have no declarable interest. Can I be absolutely sure about that?
Mr Haswell, that applies to me as well.
That's correct. Any action would be in relation to current directors, but I think if members wish to wait until they've actually seen that report, it may inform them as to whether they're required to declare an interest. I know our procedure is that you declare it at the beginning of the meeting. You've not seen this report. I would suggest that you wait. There will be a recess and we can address those issues before you consider the item.
Councillor Nicholson.
It's okay. I was going to suggest that because I was going to ask a question about the content regarding Councillor Maitland's question.
If there's no other declarations, move on to item 3, minute of meeting of 4th of December 2012. Take this as a correct record. Take no dissent as agreement. Move on to item 4, scrutiny of budget proposals 2013-14, 15-16. We have a report there. Now, it's been through 2 committees so far, and what's sort of happened in the past is people who wish to ask questions on the templates ask questions. As chair, I'll do my best to answer them. And if I can't get you an answer, there's somebody taking a note, and we'll get the question written down and we'll get an answer to you as quick as we can before the end of this week. I think the system that works best is if we go through each template individually. So if there's any questions on the initial report, no. We go to the first template, which is template 22 on page 22, and it's the VYP telephony project. Are there any questions? No questions. Move on to template 23, efficiency programmes, procurement, review of supplies and services costs. Councillor Smith.
Chair, obviously when the Labour Group was developing its alternative budget, we aimed to try to have savings in areas such as administration by department. Obviously what you've decided to do is to lump the whole lot into one stencil. What's disappointing about the stencil, it doesn't actually give you any breakdown. You know, we've got the same amount of information in this report about £1 million saving next year than we have in some reports that talk about a few £1,000 savings. Why is there no breakdown by department of these actual savings? How can we scrutinise this template and determine whether or not there's going to be savings across the council in each individual department if we don't actually have a breakdown? And specifically, can I ask what the savings is in the Business Gateway tender? How much is that for?
The reason they're all put in together is the procurement was felt as one actual saving issue, and that's why we actually took the decision to go through a single way of doing it. We have a single procurement service now, which is led up centrally, and we would look to make sure that across the issues, now there might be opportunities in some areas that we could get better savings, in other areas we might not achieve as much through the procurement process. So it's a case of just allowing us to have a corporate saving across the whole council. I can understand you could do it in individuals, but we look to aggregate it all into one saving, one template. As for the specific one on Business Gateway, don't have that to hand. That's one I'll make sure that I have to you by the end of this week.
So what is the savings in procurement then?
It's looking at how we can buy things cheaper. If we can go through the items that we are procuring and make sure that we get the most efficient services we can. We actually asked if we could get more out of this, and we were told that this was the amount that was comfortable with office to achieve, but we would have liked to have seen a higher figure in there. I think there is more opportunities to get savings through better procurement.
That wasn't the question. I know what procurement is. It's how much are we saving through procurement. This template covers not just procurement, it covers the print strategy, it covers water charges, it covers procurement, it covers business gateway, it covers supplies and services, it covers a whole range of things all lumped together as one. What is the breakdown of each of these items? How much are we saving in procurement, first of all?
I don't have that in front of me just now, and I couldn't give you an accurate one because we have that information, and I'll get it to you by the end of the week.
Well, obviously you won't have a breakdown of the print strategy, you won't have a breakdown of the water charges, you won't have a breakdown of the other items either then. Can I just ask though, are you confident that there is a saving to be had in the business gateway tender?
Yes.
Is there a reason then why, when the Labour group asked officers that very question, the answer we got from officers was the business gateway contract has been awarded following a full tender process and begins from January the 1st for 5 years, so in effect there is no way of bringing forward a saving from the contract at this stage. Why were we given one answer and you've obviously been given a different answer?
Well, it's under the current budget for that allocation. We have allocated the new contract, but there is a saving within that, and we are taking that money out of the budget.
But you don't know how much for it. You're taking it from the new contract that was awarded. That's where the savings coming from, yes?
That's my understanding, yes.
Right, okay. But you don't know why we were told there was no savings in the new contract, but you were obviously given different information.
Well, it was in the actual saving that was agreed because we have actually got a contract in place. The contract is less than the previous one.
That's right. But can I just read the answer again? This is a question I asked officers in the department responsible for Business Gateway. The question was, I understand that the National Business Gateway contract is currently being re-tendered. Although the core contract will be established nationally, there is obviously local flexibility, and we'd be grateful for your comments on whether the tendering process could release some savings. And the answer was that the Business Gateway contract has been awarded following a full tender process, obviously they knew the amount, and begins from January the 1st for 5 years. So in effect, there is no way of bringing forward a saving from the contract at this stage. We were effectively told there was no savings. But you've obviously built a savings into that. And I'm pleased there is a savings, but I'm just curious as to why you were given information about a saving, which I appreciate you don't know what the actual figure is, but why you were given information saying there was a savings in the Business Gateway contract, but the Labour group weren't given that information.
Councillor Geddes.
That's obviously an issue, sir, which has got to be clarified, and you're in no position to clarify that today. My advice, though you don't need my advice, is you've taken a note of it, you've given an undertaking, and I would suggest you move on.
Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, it's to the bullet point and indeed above the print strategy review and spend on supplies and services, including equipment. And my question is, and there's no detail here, perhaps we could get the answer, whether indeed we are making full and best use of our own print departments or print units that exist. And there was, on one occasion, that we would go out and try and procure services from other authorities to, provide them with supplies and services, whether indeed we've explored that, and if that is still being a measure that we are exploring in terms not just of savings, but how we can generate income.
Yes, we're looking at all those options in the upcoming years. There's opportunities within the current one to find some efficiencies, and if there's opportunities for income generation, that'll be one that we'll be looking at in the future as well. Move on to item 20, or template 24, page 26. No questions. I'll move on to template 20. Councillor Marshall.
Thanks. Yeah, no, just a general question with regards to, it's over £500,000 we're envisaging saving on this. And if you look at the narrative and the issues concerns, it basically say last year the required savings had a positive impact on working arrangements with no impact on frontline service delivery. I'm just thinking, if you're predicting over a £500,000 saving, surely there must be some impact on frontline services. I know you can say it for 1 year, there wasn't after analysing that, but when you look at the impact assessment, there must be some sort of risks to the service users with a £500,000 saving in staff.
Well, the advice that was sought from the officers was that this was achievable and that there would be no impact on frontline services with this saving. So that is why that line is in there. Template 25. Template, Councillor Maitland.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm not absolutely certain how to configure this. I've written down in my notes here, so how do we ensure that we don't double count within services? I'm looking at the last section in the narrative description of savings option. It's important to recognise these amounts are high-level estimates and that to some extent these savings will be brought forward by other council services as specific savings proposals. So, yes, that's right. So we're absolutely sure that we won't be looking at the same savings that other services are proposing to put forward.
Well, we asked the question to make sure that it wasn't double counted, and we were given a reassurance that this wasn't double counting. It was actually taken into consideration that some of the opportunities to do this could be taken elsewhere and recorded through the other budget proposals. This was the amount that was suggested that could be not allocated to other budget proposals. Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, it refers to the cost of higher paid duties. These currently cost approximately £500,000 per annum. Could I ask if this is being applied across all departments and not just contained to CES, where there has been instances, or have been instances, where a person wishes to exercise early retirement, but they can't because there's no effective cost savings within that department. But if it's within another department, that we will look at redeployment as a means of moving people across and effective savings in another department through CES and that department's involvement. Is that the practice and policy being applied?
This will be across all council services because it's a corporate saving, and it was felt that it should be reported through this committee as a corporate saving. So this will apply across all of the council services.
So the practice will apply to what I've suggested there, if I get clarification on that one, that if it's another department, then we can redeploy people out of one department into another by way of redeployment, not just looking at CES.
Well, my understanding it will be a case of redeployment if they are able to move into another department. Template 26, rationalisation of non-schools property. Councillor Marshall.
I find this a very kind of optimistic predicted saving of 375,000. You're basing this on 17 properties. They have to go through due process, and you're actually assuming that all 17 will be, put on the open market. I certainly know that one of the ones that's already vacated, Cornerstones in Annan, basically, it has to go through due process, which includes the area committee, which includes actually speaking to the service departments, and certainly that has been earmarked for part of the Annan Community Hub. So basically, to actually hit your 375,000 target, you're predicting that all 17 of these properties will actually go through the process without any challenges or from the service departments, or any challenges from area committee. So, I mean, I think that's very optimistic if you're hoping to save that amount.
There is an allowance in there actually, if we don't actually meet all the savings, there has been money put in. If you add them up, the company 400 and we've allowed 41,000. We're confident that we will achieve that target.
Sorry, that's an allowance for delay. You're actually assuming that all these, you will actually not have any kind of, charges on these. And I would say that, the 17, there's a good chance that 2 or 3 of these actually could be retained either within another service within the council. So I just don't think this is achievable.
we feel that these are achievable figures. That's why we've put them in. Councillor Scobie?
Yeah, just to build on what Sean's saying, you know, the asterisk there says the individual amounts shown above our full year budgets and are therefore dependent on these properties being vacated by 1st April 2013. My understanding, if I just take 70 to 74 George Street at the top of that page, that is currently occupied and the lease is up until 2014 with the owner of the property, and there does not, to my knowledge, seem to be any move, or I have not been informed, nor do I believe the area committee, that we are going to vacate 74 George Street. So if that, the 1st April is fast coming upon us, therefore that 375, if that is the case, that one alone will affect the 375,000. Could we have clarification?
My understanding is the proposal is to come out of there. We've been told and advised that these are achievable figures, and we also have an asterisk which covers a point Councillor Marshall made, that it may not be from the 1st, but within a timescale that would allow us to achieve those revenue savings. Councillor Lever.
Thanks, Chair. Mention's made of 95 members of council staff having to be relocated. Has any budget been set aside for that?
Yes.
Chair, could we be provided with more information, you know, and particularly in 74 George Street and likewise 39 Louis Street? The same could be said for any Dunby house, which is occupied just now, and indeed 39 Louis Street, the ones that I do know of. So could we have further information on those?
I'll get you an answer to the question as to how it's proposed. Item, well, template 27, corporate transport. Councillor Maitland.
Sorry, I should have actually dealt with this one out with the committee, but can you just tell me, will that leasing include a valeting contract? Do you remember we had a valeting contract, which I think was rolled up with the leasing? It might or might not be. I just want to be sure that that's the case, or not the case.
I'm not 100% sure on whether valeting is included in that or not. The procurement savings are actually moving the lease out from the current deal for another 2 years, I think. That allows us to get a procurement saving in there. If that's the case, we'll move on to Appendix 4, Graduate Experience Employment Programme. There's no questions on that. Right. Mr. Haswell, we've had questions with regard to scrutiny. Any questions I haven't answered or I've asked that I'll come back. I'll try and make sure that they're with everyone by the end of play on Thursday. Councillor Smith.
Can I ask if that's the same with all service committees then? Because we asked, obviously, a considerable number of questions at Planning, House and Environment Services. I've still not had an answer to a single question I asked that day.
I'll make sure you get answers by Thursday this week. With that, we'll move on to item 5, policy on treatment of capital receipts. We have the paper in front of us. Mr. Garrett, have you anything to add to the report? Are you happy to answer questions?
Just very briefly, thanks, Chair. This report proposes an update into the Council's existing capital receipts policy. Rather than a significant change in that policy, it really just reinforces what's already there but provides some more details. The underlying policy will continue to be that receipts should be applied to the corporate pot, and the determination of how they should be applied should be determined by this committee at a corporate level. However, it does make explicit the opportunity for service area committees to request exceptions to that rule on specific basis. The report also covers the approach to be taken in terms of treatments of shortfalls or excesses against the estimates of capital receipts and a range of other issues. But as I say, it's more detail on the existing policy rather than significant changes. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Geddes.
Thanks very much, Leader. It's the second last bullet point on page 43 relating to we're still shy of a further £255,000 from the sale of former DG First depots, etc. as part of that department's depot rationalisation programme. Can I ask, Leader, what arrangements we have in place to ensure, in fact, that this target figure is met as soon as possible?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah. Members agreed total receipts from depot sales of 1.4 million to contribute towards the overall depot rationalisation programme. The lion's share of those receipts has already been generated. We're £255,000 short at the minute. There's still a number of properties on the market available for sale, and we're confident that existing shortfall will be met in the near future.
Grateful, sir. Thank you.
Councillor Dykes.
Just on the back of that question from Councillor Geddes, would it be possible for us to get a list of what's actually come in and from where, so that we know what's still left to be sold?
Yes, absolutely. Yep, got that detail.
Councillor Marshall.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just what Paul was saying there, and he actually reiterated it with regards to that there's still the opportunity for area committees and service committees to actually make a request to the Policy and Resources. I just wanted to clarify that is under the current process, so that basically the reports go to the area committee, etc., so that they can actually flag up. Is that the case?
Yes, that is the case. Really, what this is trying to do, just make it clear in terms of the process for that approach.
There's no other question. Councillor Nicholson.
Just on the £100,000 fund that you're setting up, this is for security and maintenance of buildings rather than service committees, rather than the services providing that money for that. Obviously they've got their money in a budget somewhere. Will they be feeding that budget that they had in to that £100,000?
At the moment, the costs are relatively low. There's about £30,000 to £40,000 spent a year at the minute, but it's very variable in terms of the impact on that on services. What that tends to do at the minute is delay the generation of savings, because the services have to use the amount generated from no longer running the properties to keep the security and maintenance in place. So there's not kind of set budgets there that are available to support this on an ongoing basis. So that's why we're proposing to set up this fund.
Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, understood that. Obviously they had the money in place anyway, because they were managing that fund. So obviously they'll have extra money, if you want, within their services. But on the exceptions to that, there's two specific exceptions. DG First Depot Rationalisation. Now, I'm not sure about this because I couldn't find all the detail on it. But DG First, for example, when they moved out the Cargan Bridge, they were relying on the receipts from the depots that they were closing to make the alterations and make the additions to there. Now, for what I remember, the plans I've seen at first for Cargan Bridge were less than what's actually been achieved out at Cargan Bridge just now. So in other words, if I take a figure, they said it would cost £750,000. It now costs £1 million for to do extra to the rationalisation in that Cargan Bridge property. Is that money here, that £255,000, is that part of this additional money that they used, or the additional money that they need, rather than the money that was agreed, rather than from the original?
Could you clarify that, Mr. Garrett?
The £255,000 is a shortfall against the approved budget in relation to the contribution from capital receipts to support the overall depolisation programme. It's not been increased above that beyond what members previously approved. I think, to be fair, we had indicated in reports, and we're talking 2008 when this came forward, that the level of receipts generated would exceed the amount required and would be available to support the corporate pot for other projects. We're not at that stage yet. There are still a number of properties on the market. We need to get £255,000 to balance off the depot rationalisation scheme. Anything over and above that will support the corporate targets.
Will we actually exceed that then, will we?
Obviously, it depends on how much we get in for those properties, but there is a schedule there of the market value of those that are still in the market, and if we get those market values, that will be exceeded, yes.
one last thing. My concern is obviously, you know, the rationalisation at Cargan Bridge. It was a property that we don't own. It's a property that, you know, it's just growing and growing and growing. And whether they can just use, you know, it says use sales now. If you're having additional depots, etc., out for sale, and that money goes back into Cargan Bridge.
My understanding, it's just the agreed amount, and if there's any additional, that would have to come back, reported to this committee, or through DG first and then to this committee to actually do it. Councillor McComb.
Chair, am I alone in being a wee bit concerned about all this investment on a site which the council doesn't own?
I think there was concerns raised at the time with regard to that. There was approaches made to see if we could actually purchase the property, but that wasn't fruitful at the time, and the business case showed that the lease was better than purchasing. I don't know whether it's something we could follow up and look at again as to see if we could look to purchase a site if required rather than lease it, but currently I think the business case that was put forward showed that it was beneficial to the council in revenue terms to actually progress with that. Now the concerns I think are there that in the future it may not be as beneficial, but currently that's the policy that we have in place. Same point, Councillor Nicholson? Same point,
yeah. Just on that, and it might be worthwhile as a learning process where we've actually came from and where we actually are with the Cargan Bridge depot, you know, and how we've actually got there, got to the stage where we are, and spend, etc. as well. So it might be worthwhile having that information as a learning process as well.
Councillor Dyke.
Just on exactly the same point. I mean, I remember when I first joined the council in 2007, this was discussed. I believe at one point in time, prior to that, the council had been offered the building and decided not to purchase. I don't know how much truth's in that, but at the end of the day, we are where we are, and we need to progress from this point.
Councillor Crothers.
Thanks, Leader. Just to ask a question, you come back with information at another time. When was that decision actually made to progress that? Just a reminder. You can come back to me with that.
I'll get you the exact dates from a report because I couldn't give you that off the top of my head. Right. With that, members are asked to agree the update policy on the treatment of capital receipts as set in the appendix of this report, and to recommend the establishment of a surplus properties maintenance fund of 100,000 through an allocation from the corporate change fund. And Mr. Haswell, will you take the points? Might be something worth in the future looking at learning points from Cargan Towers. Yeah. Do we want a report back on that? Yeah. Right. Move on to item 6. Chief Executive Service Budget Monitoring 2012-13, period to the 30th of November 2012.
Nothing to add to the report, Chairman. I'll answer questions, or Paul will answer questions. You'll see where we are on target for a balanced budget at the end of the financial year, and we have achieved the 2012-13 savings target set by the Council for us at the last budget.
Councillor Maitland.
It's just a question about the profiling of the spend on modern apprentices, Leader. It's just that we appear to spend very little, and then there's a projected outturn of £1 million, so 82,000 up to the end of November, and then suddenly we're going to spend a lot. I'm sure there's a good reason for that. Could I just have an explanation?
Mr. Hinton-Smith.
The Modern Apprentice programme, some of it's only just started to come on stream. So we've just taken on the first tranche, I think it's of about 59 modern apprentices. So though that spend is quite low, it's really just a matter of fact that reflects the fact that it's taken time for this programme to get up and running.
If there are no other questions, I'll move to the Councillor Ogilvie and Councillor Nicholson.
It's on 3.12 about the 1% vacancy assumption. I and it's quite clear. But I wanted to tie that back to page 28, template 25, and overtime savings. I was going to raise it there, but I wouldn't know which bit to tie it in, because the two things are if you're going to run with an assumption of vacancies, and you're topping up that manpower with overtime, if you're going to reduce overtime, will have an impact on service delivery. The two things are linked, I believe.
Mr. Haswell.
It's manageable, sir. We've looked at it.
Councillor Nicholson.
No, it's been answered that. But just as a general question, this 1% vacancy assumption, is that across all services?
It's across all services, sir. 1% across all services.
With that, recommendations, members are asked to note the Chief Executive Senior Management Team will exert strict spending control measure to ensure that the currently projected overspend of 18,000 is addressed by the end of the financial year to return a balanced budget. Item 7, Director 6 monthly assessment of business plan performance, Chief Executive Service. Mr. Haswell.
Thanks, Chairman. This is the 6 monthly assessment of how we're performing against our business plan. Where there are issues, we have produced exception reports for members. I don't think there's anything to add to the report other than to say we'll answer questions. The Chief Exec Service Departmental Management Team is all here.
Councillor Dyke.
Thank you. On page 57, under respond to FOI requests within 20 working days, it's just about the target figure there, because I thought that target figure should read 100%. I thought that was legally binding, but I just wanted to ask some questions on it.
If I can maybe reassure Councillor Dykes that we are achieving above the average. The Scottish average is about 75% targeted time. The working day is a statutory figure, but you have the ability of writing to a person who makes a request for an awful lot of information and say it's going to take more than 20 days to produce this information. And that happens on a fairly regular basis. We have had in the recent past a number of major requests for information which have taken a lot of time to gather, particularly in terms of historic information. We are slightly short of the target, but we are achieving an 83% as opposed to a 75%, which is across the rest of Scotland. But there are times when you can't achieve the 20 days, and the Act acknowledges that.
Yeah, that's fine as long as we are responding, saying that we will get back to people, and I'm sure we are.
Councillor Maitland.
Leader, in August, which is when we looked at our business plan, the blurb said that the review of strategic property and DG design and networks has recently been completed, and the actions arising from the review are being considered. And I would draw your attention to page 54, which is where we are talking about implementing the review of strategic property services, which is supposed to begin on the 1st of October and is due to finish at the end of December, which I think is actually very slow, bearing in mind that we've had the review, and I think that we should be asking for a report to come forward on what is actually happening with respect to the property review, because I think this has gone on for quite a long time. This was flagged up a long time, even before actually the previous business plan, or this current business plan. Under the project action in the August report, we had, on the 28th of September, the review was 79% completed and was described as being on schedule. So I think there is a sense of sort of movement on this, which I don't completely understand in terms of monitoring it. And I think we should, as I say, have a report back on where we are with respect to the property review. What actions are being taken and when, and what is being proposed, because it's not clear to me what's going on.
I'm happy to provide the member with information. If I can say that the review was undertaken, where we are now is implementing it. The first job we have to do is to appoint and look at the senior management within Strategic Property Services and DG Design engineers. That work has now been completed. Job descriptions, person specifications, etc. have been drawn up, and my intention is that adverts will appear. We delayed putting adverts out over the Christmas period for obvious reasons. Adverts will appear within the next week to 10 days for the senior posts. We then do a cascade in terms of the Council's matching exercise, where we will match or competitively match as we go down through the structure. We have a structure there. We understand how it's going to be taken forward. So I would assure the member that we are moving forward. I appreciate there may appear to have been something of a hiatus. I can assure you it wasn't because we weren't addressing the issue, but these jobs will be advertised in the next week to 10 days. If members want a report, I'll come back to a future meeting with a report explaining how the process is going. Can remind members that it is a process that we are now in, and the process takes its time. Just remind you, the Chief Executive refocusing took approximately 18 months to be completed, because you're dealing with every member of staff within that service or these services. We're also removing DG Design engineers to DG First and creating a mix between architects from DG Design and staff from Strategic Property Services. So that has taken some time to work out how best to address that.
Councillor Marshall.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to follow up with regards to the response that Alec gave. You're obviously right, you know, that the FOI legislation, you've got to respond within 20 working days, and if you can't because of the request, then you have to actually notify the person asking for that. I just wanted to get a guarantee that the 17% that we haven't met are all due to the fact that it was for requests for extensive information, and not for the sake that maybe the information that was required could have been given within the 20 days, but because there was a delay from the person that was providing the information to the FOI officer.
I spoke specifically with Alec Little about that. Alec gets full cooperation from all services. There can be delays due to people being away from their desk or on holiday or something like that, but we always address those issues and make sure that the person who's requesting the information is advised of the fact that we're going to be more than 20 days. The vast majority are because of the bulk of the information requested, or the fact that it's of a historic nature, which means you've got to actually go and look for it. If it's not held electronically, somebody's got to physically go into the archives and look for it.
Councillor Carson.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question on the absence from work. I'm not sure which page I'm looking at, because it's an exception. The current performance is detailed for every department apart from education, which is other than non-teaching. I wondered why that was excluded from this, and whether those teaching roles are actually included in the overall figures. The other question was, I presume that there's additional information available to officers to drill down into these, because it's very well have an average number of days off, but that may actually, it doesn't really highlight that we've got persistent absenteeism in certain departments, or whether it's average across. Average is only useful in some instances. I'm not suggesting that we should get that information, because the last thing I want to see is individual staff's performances or whatever, but it's just to be assured that officers can actually drill down to see what the average is, or the mean, or whatever statistically it's described as. But specifically, I wondered why in the education figures here it's only non-teaching that's actually shown in the exception report.
Chairman, I can assure that the management information is used. We have a maximised attendance policy, and we drill down to the individuals. I'm going to ask Paul to go into the detail for Councillor Carson, if you don't mind, sir.
Chair, in terms of the SPI information, the one that excludes teaching is actually an SPI, and we're required to provide it in that format. Key to improving overall absence within education is to actually look at the reasons for non-teaching staff actually above target, and that's something we're tackling through an improvement plan, as we have in other services, DG First and social work services being examples of these. Very much getting to the root of individual absence problems, be it long-term absence or short, infrequent absence are key to actually overall improvement. And we do drill down, we provide very detailed monthly reports, and we provide additional reports to service managers, and we work very closely with them to look into hotspots and reasons for absence and work totally in that way.
Councillor Lever.
Yeah, my question was about the absence as well. How do these figures compare to our comparator authorities and across local authorities in Scotland as a whole? And I noticed the other exception, or one of the other exception reports, is the percentage of staff who complete an annual performance development review. That's been quite low, although in some areas it's rising very quickly now. Is there a link between that? I mean, actually, we're going through a period of very rapid change in terms of losing staff and redeploying staff. And what we need to make sure is that the staff who remain have got the support in place in terms of technical support and their experience in terms of actually carrying out their new roles. Is there a link between them?
Very much so. We have very detailed reviews of progress being made at departmental level. In terms of the levels of absence across Scotland, clearly all authorities are trying to improve, and we continue in most instances to be around mid-table. As they improve, we attempt to improve. Also, what we can see from the report there is, although some departments in terms of PDR are under target, there's strenuous efforts being made to improve on that, and we're agreeing the plans, and the indications there of progress that will be made in the future have been signed off by either the director or the service managers to ensure we get buy-in on that, because clearly we can exhort and encourage, but it's for departments to actually deliver on this.
Councillor Geddes.
Well, can I say, sir, it was, and you've heard me say before, albeit perhaps out with the chamber, I think it's unfortunate the way that we take these reports, because we've got this report on the agenda now, we've got a report later on the agenda in relation to another service, and if we really are serious about, getting the maximum benefit from performance management reviews, we should be taking these reports together in a particular part of the agenda, and we should be structuring it in such a way that, in fact, we take each individual aspect of the exception reports and we worry that to death before we move on to another one. Because, I mean, my question, unfortunately, relates to a report that, that we've already looked at, and it was in the back of Councillor Maitland's well-founded, as far as I'm concerned, apprehensions, concerns about, the performance of a particular section, of the council strategic property. And I think there's a significant number of members express unease about this. And it's a wee bit ironic, that we're talking earlier on, we agreed earlier on about a report, almost a historical report, and that's not meant to belittle, anyone, as to where we are currently in relation to Carrigan Bridge, when perhaps we should be looking more at upping the performance and upping the game, as it were, of certain sections, and the more immediate, and the more current, and more importantly, future activities as well. Now, I hesitate, as it were, I appreciate we're all under pressure, elected members and particularly officials. I hesitate to ask for yet a further report, but given the degree of concern that I've certainly picked up, and I'm sure I'm not alone in that, it might be worthwhile finding out just exactly why, there is this perception, and why, or if there are good, genuine, compelling reasons as to why some of us feel, in fact, that it is taking an unconscionable length of time, as it were, to progress some of these issues.
Mr. Aswell.
Can I maybe split Councillor Gerry's statement into two? The first one related to and I hesitate to use the word, the monitoring oblique scrutiny of these performance reports. There has been a group set up, a subcommittee set up, which is being asked to look at the council's business arrangements in terms of standing order, schemes of delegation and things like that. And the Chief Executive has already flagged up with me the need to look at how we look at monitoring reports in a bit more detail. And I hope that the subcommittee will take advice and that will be addressed and will come forward. I think in terms of the issue, I'm not clear what Councillor Geddes is alluding to in terms of property services. I know that there are opinions and there are perceptions, he used the word himself, that things go wrong in property services. Property services tend to be the backroom boys. I'm not defending any issues that may have gone in the past. Could I maybe ask Mr Geddes if I could have a word with him at the conclusion of this meeting, and if there is a need for further information to come forward to members, I'll bring it forward.
With your leave, sir, can I respond? You know, first of all, I'm delighted. You know, the first part of Mr. Haswell's, answer. I think that is an issue which has really got to be addressed urgently and to be developed as appropriate. And the second one, yes, by all means, I'm more than willing to meet with Mr. Haswell. I've other fish to fry with him, as a matter of fact, anyway, Chairman. So that'll be a good opportunity. Thank you.
Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, I'm referring to page 55 under the satisfaction with our services, and again refer to page 67 where, you know, on the narrative, the reason for change is, I note the change, but the reason for that change is the council-wide indicator managed and maintained by community and customer services, because there is no indication, if you like, as to how we are doing with percentage of members satisfied with the service as measured through member satisfaction survey. And there is reference to the EMIS, the members electronic system. And while the EMIS system has a value in as much that it starts to identify the weaknesses in the system, there is no indication of how we are improving on that service, or indeed if there is measures afoot to improve the services. I say this beyond EMIS, where, you know, responses, which you're very lucky if you do get it within the 3 days, you know, to any correspondence, and again, even within the 21 days. And when you do receive the 21 days, it's the escalation to that, and indeed what action is being taken, because I do not see it from the performance indicators as to how we improve the services beyond the 21 days and to the satisfaction not only of the elected member, but the people we strive to serve. So if it's omitted because it happens to be with the maintenance and management, happens to be with community, customer and services, I think we should be looking at that in terms of the improved service across the board, and perhaps to reintroduce that point under satisfaction with our services. My next point is to, and it's been alluded already, the key performance indicators under openness and transparency. Response to FOI, the percentage of appropriate staff that have been trained. And again, I look at the narrative in terms of the complaints handling policy, where it refers to the fact that the document was approved by Audit and Risk Management Committee. I think it was approved with a number of caveats, and indeed one where the draft report would include reference or examples of the type of complaints, you know, and I think, you know, to include 3 examples in there. It will change come 2014, when we will be expected to put all the complaints before a committee. But in that respect, it's, you know, I believe there has already been 3 occasions where the data protection has been breached. And indeed, I don't know if there's been any more, but it's just to the whole response percentage complaints procedure. They're all tied together in terms of people seeking information, particularly under the data protection, and just how big a minefield that actually is, and it ends up more what we don't do as to what we do. And I had the opportunity of raising this at Audit and Risk, and I bring it back here to Policy and Resources in terms of, you know, reduction, etc. But we need to know how we're doing on that, Chair, I would suggest.
A number of issues there, Chairman. If I can maybe go back to the freedom of information request. Freedom of information requests quite often start off and then a complaint follows, because the people need the information to answer the to formulate their complaint. I can assure you that we are dealing with all freedom of information requests as received, as I've already advised, particularly in relation to the question from Councillor Marshall. The change that we're making in terms of EMIS reporting, our business plan did not make provision for us to report back on our CES performance in EMIS. The business plan in future, there will be a performance indicator included, so you will be able to monitor how the Chief Executive Service responds in terms of EMIS. Can I remind members that you also agreed, I think it was at your last meeting, regarding EMIS, that you were looking to appoint a members' champion, for want of a better term, in terms of EMIS, and that is moving on as well. I think Councillor Scobie is quite correct. EMIS was intended as a tool to see how people were performing, to identify those people who required to be advised that they had to do better, so to speak. It is being used for that purpose. I accept that there are times when Councillor Scobie feels that he's not got a response. We do endeavour to give responses to all members as quickly as we possibly can. I'm not saying it's a perfect system. It's a system in the course of development, and I'm quite happy to continue to develop it. Yes, the report, which Councillor Scobie alludes to on the complaints, had 3 examples incorporated into it, because I saw the examples of being incorporated into it. So that's been done, and as he's well aware, we will be reporting more closely on complaints and complaints monitoring starting on the 1st of April and into next financial year. So these issues are being addressed, Chairman.
Follow up?
Yeah, if I could come back just on the point that was referred to the EMIS system, and indeed it's the performance improvement, not just to identify the weakness in the system, but in case someone needs extra training, or it's just a pure lack of no doing that, or whatever. But that there is an indication that the performance is improving, not just as the value of EMIS to flag up that there is a weakness in the system or in the service delivery, but the council is doing to improve that service, and indeed to meet maximum satisfaction, not only of the elected member, but I've already said the service user that lies behind, who may lie behind that elected member's query.
Perhaps I didn't articulate as well as I might have done. That's the entire idea behind EMIS, is to look at how responses come forward and to monitor that, and as a consequence, to improve performance. That's what it's about.
I have 3 first-time speakers and 1 second-time, so I'll take the first-time speakers. Councillor McGregor.
Thank you, Chair. Just a brief point, picking up on Councillor Carson's point of averages for sick leave. Certainly, I think we all accept that these KPIs are a work in progress, and what members expect to see in them is evolving as time goes on. And we were given assurances at Education last week that in future we will break down the teaching and non-teaching into long-term and short-term sick leave. Because certainly, you could have maybe 10 members off sick on a very long-term basis, which could completely skew that figure. And I think that going forward, that we're going to look at it on, from that perspective, that we have 2 KPIs, one on a long-term absence basis and one on a short-term. And I think that was doable. And I wonder if it would apply to other KPIs as well.
Mr. Clarkin.
Certainly, Chair, if that allows members to get a better grasp of what's actually going on and allows to compare across services, that's certainly something we could provide.
Councillor Carruthers.
Thanks, Chair. Just on Councillor Lever asked a very similar question, but I'll go into a wee bit more detail. But on Councillor Scobie's point, I would agree that the elected member inquiry service will at some point need more resourcing. See, on DG First, it's DG First Social Work and Education in particular. Usually if there's a higher absence rate, it's a clear indicator that there's potentially pressure or stress on that particular service. So I wonder, how do we compare nationally? If we don't have them figures, I mean, we've got nothing to compare against. I know it's away from Chief Executive Services, and that's what we're looking at. So happy for that information if you've not got it to come back with it. But just as a future reference.
Chair, I don't actually have that detail at hand at the moment. That can be obtained. Clearly, where there are specific work groups, you can actually identify spikes in terms of absence due to the nature of the work that's been carried out, either through physical absence as a result of injury and perhaps stress in some occupations. And we have a benchmarking group where we align our performance against theirs, but I just don't have that information to hand at this time.
Mr. Clarkin will give you those figures. Councillor McCaughtrey.
Thanks, Chairman. Couple of points. On page 55, very top of the page, KPI, percentage of council and committee agendas and papers issued 7 days in advance of meeting date. It's a very nice statistic, that, but I think what would be more important to measure is when members actually receive them, because quite often members don't receive these till a couple of days beforehand. So maybe you should take a look at this measurement. The fact that you issue them 7 days beforehand is one thing. The important thing is when members receive them, in order to read them, in order to come to a committee and take part in the discussion. The date of issuing is totally, it may well be a statutory duty, but I think it's a fairly relevant point, that one.
Chairman, it is not a statutory requirement. It's actually 3 working days in terms of the statute. Councillor McCaughtrey clearly has a difficulty in relation to the delivery, because if they're posted out on day 7, they will arrive with members on day 6, because they go out first class. If they're left in the group rooms, they should arrive on day 6. You can't measure each individual's papers being issued. If Councillor McCaughtrey likes to speak to Derek Crichton after the meeting, we will address any specific issues to Councillor McCaughtrey, and indeed any other member who's having difficulties in receiving their papers. Because these papers are printed and issued from the print unit 7 days before the meeting. That was what members agreed when they put in this performance target for Chief Executive Service.
Fine, happy with that answer. Next one, Chairman, is points we move at the absenteeism level, and I think it highlights the fact that we're not getting the sort of service we used to get as elected members. We used to get monthly reports to the Asset Management Committee on absence levels, and you can also make comparisons then as well. I think it's certainly something we come to look at delegation to committees, how we handle the whole aspect of the manpower within the authority, how we determine when we appoint officers, how we determine absenteeism levels, etc., etc. But at one time there used to be a document, and I think it was produced by SIPFA. They produced a small volume every year that used to get dished out to every member, and that gave you comparisons of absence rates in various local authorities in the various departments, along with all the financial data, how much was spent per capita on education in the primary sector, the nursery sector, the secondary sector, how much was spent per capita on the elderly, etc., etc., etc. Now, I'm not sure if SIPFA still produced that annual document, but it's a very handy aid memoir for members to have in terms of making comparisons. And certainly one thing that always came through was in terms of absenteeism, that this authority was way below what was happening elsewhere in Scotland, and I would hope that's still the case. But is that document still available?
Mr. Garrett?
I think you might be referring to the rating review, which is actually not published anymore, but they still make the information available. But I can't recall absence statistics ever being in that document. It was a financially based document, so I know population figures were in there, but I can't remember absence figures being in that document, if that's the one you're referring to.
I just wondered if it was still on the go, but if it's not on the go anymore, fair enough.
Councillor Maitland.
Slightly unusually from this, I want to say well done, actually, to the Chief Executive Service. It's on page 64, and it's about somebody mentioned it, but just in brief, and I think it's worth expanding on. It's about performance development reviews, leader. There is obviously patchy performance across the services. It is quite clear that the Chief Executive Service leads by example, 98.7% complete, so it has done what it set out to do. I think probably what we're receiving from this is that it doesn't seem to me that if departments are not doing that, if they're not providing their staff with a performance development review on time, it seems to me there is a sort of lack of understanding that if you do not communicate with your staff, then our priorities will not be properly communicated. That's the way that I look at it. And I'm really, I suppose, saying that there should be a clear line of sight between our desires, our political requirements through the single outcome agreement, through work that's being done and reading down into what people are actually doing on the ground. So, you know, staff surveys, which we don't do, I think, except biannually, to find out what their contribution is. So we're not going to really know that staff really feel that they understand clearly what their contribution is. And unless we use this tool properly, and I noticed that PES was talking about 14% completed, well, I mean, you know, that's really very slow. And I'm sure now I'll be told that it's much better now. But, you know, it actually should be a smooth curve of activity that should be done. In essence, I want to ask the Chief Executive Service, because they are responsible for the overall corporate aspect of this, how we plan to get the message across that it is absolutely essential. It's not an add-on. It's not oh God, what a bore, I've got to give somebody a performance review. It's critical to communicate to staff what we, as elected members, expect to see on the ground. So I want to ask how that's going to be done and how it's going to be made more important.
Councillor Maitland expected the stock answer. I'll give her the stock answer. The figures that you have vastly improved. We are collating information for a specific period. The Chief Executive Service accelerated their PDRs for the very reason that Councillor Maitland has given, to lead by example. That was the first thing. We regularly, the Chief Executive in his one-to-ones with directors refers to PDRs, refers to the need to ensure that PDRs are cascaded and undertaken correctly. Some departments are bigger than others, and it therefore takes a lot longer to do the process. And I think you'll find that the figures that come out next time round will be much improved for all of the services. So yes, the message is put across loud and clear. There is a need for proper attention to be paid to PDRs. I speak to fellow directors. I don't think any of them would disregard PDRs and think that they were a chore now. We see them as a valuable tool in communicating with staff.
In future years, when we do see the half-yearly report whereby 50% of the staff should have been through the PDR, will we see it more evenly? I think that's one of the concerns. Currently, it looks like, oh, it's something tagged on at the end and we'll get through it, and we're having to get through it. But I would hope future practice will be that if there's 100 folk to go through a PDR, by halfway through the year, 50 will be done, and 50, and it's a programme rather than just, well, we need to do it. Could you reassure us on that? I
can give you that assurance, sir. I'm quite sure that the Assistant Chief Executive's taken that on board, and that will be one of the improvements that we see in terms of producing PDRs.
Councillor Crowther.
Was the second part of that question answered? I know, just because I was really inquisitive to hear the answer, and it was, I think James was trying to ease out if there's a correlation between the personal development reviews and the priorities or agreed priorities of the council. I think that's what you were saying, but just to...
Yes, there is a correlation. The message does get through as to what the council is about. It's the opportunity for line managers and managers to speak to staff. We also have other ways of doing it. We have staff focus groups. We have other ways of communicating with our staff. We don't just communicate with them through the personal development review. But straight from the SOA, the infamous golden thread, as it's always been called, is going through staff, right to the very people on the ground floor delivering the services.
Surely the clue's in the name now. It's a performance development review, and the thing is, we should be hitting 100%, because basically at a time when we're rationalising staff, and at the same time, a lot of the times the work isn't disappearing, so you're expecting people to take on new duties, etc. Then this is one of the only opportunities of actually feeding back, but also developing people into new duties and new roles. So I mean, 35% a half year is poor. So we really need to see or get some guarantee that by the end of the year, what you're predicting, what you're hoping to meet. You've got an annual target of 100%, so you would now need to put some measures in place to ensure that you get that percentage up as quickly as possible.
Councillor Dick.
Thanks, Chair. Just in relation to the objectives 1 and 2 and paragraph 3.5,
Given the focus now on innovation, I would see the PDRs as an ideal opportunity to be discussing and communicating with staff about their role and function within the council, and for in order to get ideas from staff.
Right, if we go to recommendations, members are asked to review the overall summary of performance. I think we've done that. Scrutinise exception reporting and consider whether the actions proposed are adequate to improve performance and future monitoring of areas which have not met the target, and recognise the areas of good practice, high performance where the target has been exceeded. I'm getting a whisper in my ear. Do we record your congratulations? Councillor Maitland.
As long as I ask you, Chairman, how we are going to follow up on the things that we've talked about, which is PDR and the property issues. Those are the sort of two things which I think, as far as I'm concerned, come out of this particular.
And I think we're also looking at the MES to make sure that we take that forward as we go forward. Right, with that, and Councillor
With your indulgence, as the EMS champion, is it to be an elected member? Because I've got a nominee in mind.
It will be an officer, sir.
Pity.
And agree the proposed amendments to the performance information for Chief Executive Service 2012-15 business plan as detailed in Appendix 3. Any questions in that part? No? Happy with that. Right. We'll move on now to item 8. Children's Hearing Scotland proposed agreement. Mr. Haswell.
Nothing really to add. This is a follow-up report. This is the Children's Hearing Scotland Act 2011. The report deals with an agreement to ensure that the children's hearing system continues at a local level. Nothing to add to the report. The grant aid, if members are interested, referred to is 83,000, and we will continue to receive that in order to support the service locally. They are looking for council representatives on the area support team, which I think is the follow-up to the Children's Panel Advisory Committee in another guise.
Councillor Scott.
Yeah, Chair, it says Children's Hearing Scotland proposed agreement, and then under 4, or at least 4.1, on 24th of June 2013, the CPAC will be replaced with local area support teams. In the period that I served on the CPAC, then there was concern being expressed, and indeed opposition to the move away from the CPAC to each of the 32 local authorities. But I do not see any reference to it here. Is it a lost cause in the sense that it's moved away and now it is a fait accompli, it will happen, and this is the agreement to that?
Yes, so there was a previous report to members that this is a fait accompli. It's enshrined in legislation. The new convener of the Children's Panel has been appointed, and what we're trying to do here is to propose an agreement for members to reach with Children's Hearing Scotland to assure the service continuing at a local level. We've had discussions with the chair of the CPAC, who's the area convener designate, Mr. David McMillan, and he has signed up to this agreement as well.
Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you. I share some of the concerns of Councillor Scobie. I mean, it's a system that we didn't agree with, yet we're asked to use additional budget from the council to achieve the Scottish Government Act. Now, I know we got a grant from the Scottish Government, but the way the system worked before, and what we are being asked to agree here is this proposed agreement, and whether we want to take something out, put additions into that agreement for it to sign up. The thing that worries me is, you know, we're getting a grant from the Scottish Government. I know the system we had in place worked very well. There's no guarantee that the system will be equal to that service, or even better, or worse. So we're actually trying to support a system that untried, if you want. So I can understand why we're looking for support staff, and secondly, we provided that before at no cost. That was part of the council. That was additionally. Now, what Scottish Government's asking us to do is still keep providing that out of our funds. If I'm correct, provide that out of our funds, the clerk and the administration and the office, that we did on a voluntary basis beforehand.
Chairman, if I'm understanding Councillor Nicholson, no, I'm not going to comment on whether it's good, bad or indifferent system. That's a political issue, not for me. But as far as the funding is concerned, we will continue to. We received £83,000 in our grant aid settlement in the current financial year to provide the services we currently provide to the Children's Panel Advisory Committee and the Children's Panel. We will continue to receive that grant aid to support the local area service.
Yeah, I did say that, so we'll continue to get that, but we provided additional services over and above that. For what I understood it, we provided clerk service, we provided the office space at no additional cost over and above that. It was used to run the system.
In terms of best value, we will only provide £83,000 worth of service.
Councillor McCaughtrey.
Yeah, just on that, I mean, we're being told that the Scottish Government will maintain the grant settlement £82,000 to pay for the service. Is that ring-fenced? Because if it's not ring-fenced, it can get lost in future years amongst the general settlement. So I think it should be separated out so as we can hold the Scottish Government to account.
It's always been held as a budget for that particular service, sir, and will continue to do so.
What influence would we have vis-à-vis if they don't increase it, but we have increasing costs, and that doesn't match it? Have we got recourse to go to them?
Yes, sir. That figure will have to be reviewed. This agreement is, I think, for 3 years in the first instance, so it'll be subject to review.
Right. With that, if we go to the recommendations, members are asked to agree the partnership agreement between Children's Hearings Scotland and the Council in relation to the operation of the Children's Hearing System in Dumfries and Galloway, and to remit powers to sign the agreement to the Chief Executive as detailed in Appendix 2. Great. And we're asked to nominate a representative to the area support team as detailed in paragraph 4.7. My understanding is it's at least one member. We currently have 2 members on the CPAC, and I believe both those members would be willing to take up positions within the area support team. Any other nominations, if anyone else wants to join? No. Councillor Ferguson and Councillor Yen. Right, move on to item 9. Convention of Scottish Local Authorities. Anything to add to the report?
No, sir, it's a member decision report. Derek Crichton's here to answer any specific question.
Sort of falls into 3 parts, I think. I think it might be worthwhile just going through the 3 parts and taking them individually. The first one is we're asked in the recommendations is to agree this council continued membership of the Convention of Scottish Local Authorities in 2014-15 as detailed in section 3. Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, I've held the view for some time that I don't know if it is actually of great benefit to be part, and I see you taking it in part, but under 3.4, the cost of membership will be weighed against the following risk associated with non-membership, and, it refers there, would become a